that has been a very good, successful story for everybody. The free trade agreement just complete 10 years, just this January 1st. And as the last part of that free trade agreement, starting on January 1st, a good amount of Chilean produce are arriving to the market with zero tariff. Today, 100% of our over 7,500 products among both economies are free of tax. The growth has been incredible. In the last 10 years, the exchange of trade between both countries have reached $25 billion and have grown 300% since the $6 billion that was originally when this was signed in 2003, in June. So I really believe that this has been a good beneficial agreement for both countries. Well, we are a very open economy, as you might know. Chile has over 50 free trade agreements with 80% of the world GDP, and it's a very open economy. But we are in Latin America, and we think that it's very important to continue trading with our neighbors, and we hope that other countries join the alliance. As a main characteristic of the alliance, it's a very pragmatic alliance. It's not a political alliance. So basically, we are in favor of free mobility of goods, capital, people, and trade.
There is no free trade agreement just for one side. And 21 years later, we can see that, we started in '93 with $80 billion in trade between both countries. Now we have $500 billion in trade between US and Mexico. We have a surplus around $80 billion. So US send goods for around $220, $225 billion. It grows like 400 or 440% between these 20 years. Right now, Mexico buys more, combined that all the BRICS in US goods. That's something that, we need to tell to the American people. Mexico right now is buying almost the same amount that the entire European Union, right? 6 million jobs in US are depend on the Mexican and US trade. 6 million jobs. Obviously in Mexico, probably 10 million are dependent on that. We need to increase and to facilitate the trade between the countries. A lot of barriers, a lot of bad perceptions, a lot of issues in the border, right? So we need to focus on that, and for that, Presidente Peña Nieto and President Obama established different platforms to do that. One is
we've been working very hard into the international composition of our exports, and that actually it's focused in three main factors. The main factors definitely is our political, economic, and social conditions that had been help us to attract businesses down to Costa Rica, and that is just to say that we are probably one of the most stable countries and the strongest democracy in the region. We abolished the army by 1949, and that actually helped us to focus more of that budget into education and health, and of course infrastructure. We also have a very strong macroeconomic policy aimed to attract businesses and to develop the commercial policy of the country. And an example of that is that by 1984 to 2006, we have a control PEC exchange rate. And then we changed a little bit our policy into a more flexible within a band. So the exchange rate, it had been very appreciated, good enough to have a very competitive country and products. Also, the ability that we had in order to transform we used to be focused on only bananas and coffee by the 1980s, and nowadays being able to say that we are part of the global value chain, that is really remarkable. Costa Rica, actually, it's a good player internationally of
So that's obviously a great question. I think anyone who's read the paper recently has seen a number of stories about turbulence in the global economy. The U.S. is doing well. If you heard President Obama's State of the Union last night, he was very adamant about the U.S. economy doing its best since the recession. And he does have a very good point there. Job growth last year was the best in 15 years. A number of industries are doing well. The auto sector is taking off. Housing market's improving as well. So I think the conditions here are pretty supportive to trade and activity in general. I think the story has been more focused on what's going on in Europe, what's going on in Asia, and obviously the Latin American economies have a strong link to the global markets in general. I think the U.S. will in fact prove a very stabilizing force. There are a number of linkages that are, I think, very strong to the U.S. Obviously, Mexico is a huge trading partner. A number of other Latin American countries are enormous trading partners as well, albeit to a lesser extent. And a number of them are exposed to the likes of China and Europe. I think as emerging markets go, I think Latin America is extremely well positioned. China is slowing. China is slowing very gradually. I think they'll put the onus on the rest of the world to rebalance, to no longer just blatantly sell China raw materials. There will be lesser demand. I think for the most part, we don't expect a hard Chinese landing, so being defined as an all-out recession in China. You will get a very slow landing. Their government policy has encouraged a very gradual slowdown as they shift more towards a consumption economy rather towards an export one. So I think what you'll see is more integration with Latin American countries. A number of them do quite a lot of business with Chinese firms. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see that demand start to slow. And I think as the dollar appreciates, as conditions in Latin America continue to remain, I think, favorable, you'll see more and more trade linkages, and it'll make it extremely important for all of you and all of us to continue to work together to strengthen these partnerships.
Great, thank you.
In January 2011, there was enacted the Food Safety Modernization Act of 2010. And right now, the Congress the government is in a process of putting out the rules and regulations that will be followed to comply with this act. This is a major change to the way the FDA regulates imported food as well as domestic food. It seeks to ease the pressure on the border inspections by moving the inspection for food safety back into the country of origin. It places a burden on importers to make sure that their exporters are complying with the U.S. food safety regulations. As I said, the major part of the act is that it puts the burden on the food importers to make sure to take steps that the food they're importing are safe. And this includes the implementation of a foreign supplier verification program. The food facilities in the foreign countries that ship food to the United States are now required to conduct a hazard analysis. They're also required to develop and implement written preventive control plans and to maintain records of their hazard analysis and preventive control plans. They also have to make these documents available to the FDA upon request. So basically, the FDA is going to be a lot more involved in what's going on overseas. The Act also provides an expedited importation of food if you can become a voluntary qualified importer. There's a program that was set up for that.
It's really very important to take tax into account. We had a client come in. They were sourcing raw materials from the U.S., sending it to Mexico for processing into an automotive component, and then the component was being shipped from Mexico to Brazil for incorporation into the finished automobile. So that type of scenario really raises several questions. Do the free trade agreements apply? What are the import taxes? Are there any export taxes? How do the indirect taxes apply? So it's really something that we need to take into account early, and we really need a thorough analysis of the situation. We're seeing several trends in the region. I'd say that one important trend is that we're really seeing some of the local taxing authorities embracing the digital age. So what does that mean? The local tax authorities are upgrading their internal information technology systems and really bringing them up to date. What does that mean to the taxpayer? You know, that's interesting. All right, that's something that is internal to the local revenue service. What does that mean to us as taxpayers? It means that as the revenue authorities go digital, they can require taxpayers to supply more information digitally. So the scope, the breadth of the information that the taxpayer supplies to the revenue authority has really increased. What else does it mean? It means that the taxing authorities could require electronic invoicing, for example, really almost forcing taxpayers to move into the digital age as well. A few other implications. That means that the tax authorities once, you know, when they used to have the paper invoices, it was really hard to kind of share that information and process it because you're working with a stack of tax returns. Now that it's been digitalized, that means that the revenue authority can share the information with the customs authority. And if they want to, they can share it with with their central bank. They can share it with the VAT authorities. So there's more information sharing within the local governments, and there's also more information sharing cross-border. So even though the tax systems are not integrated, they're still separate, we have the revenue authorities with the ability to talk more and more with each other.